All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first week and a half of distance learning or digital learning. So in this first half week, we're just going to get started. What I want to do is use history as a way to really process what's happening and to make it as relevant for you as possible. And there are some very serious questions that people are asking and that we're having pretty new discussions about in our society. And one of the big ones we're going to look at this week is, what is the role of government during a time of crisis? And what is the role of government during a time of crisis? And I know that the question by itself sounds a little bit boring, but I'm hoping that this will actually be really interesting to you as we go along. Okay, but to talk about the role of government, we first need to ask, what is government? So do you remember these guys? We learned about them at the beginning of the year when we did that, like, who should date the Statue of Liberty weird game in class. Anyway, so these guys come up with something called social contract theory. Social contract theory. Sounds really fancy. Basically, all it means is this. If you imagine we lived in a world where there were no rules at all.
Rules are, there ain't no rules.
Right, that sounds pretty cool until your neighbor decides that what he wants to do is own like a pig farm that smells really bad. So you can't sleep. And that's his right, and you can't do anything about it. I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want. So it could devoid into something that just looks like this. Or something that looks like this.
Announcing the commencement of the annual purge. At the siren, all emergency services will be suspended for 12 hours. Your government thanks you for your participation.
Okay. So that's kind of an issue. So the idea is that what happens is that people come together and they agree that we're all going to give up a little bit of our rights in return for a safer environment. So I will give up my right to drive 300 miles an hour on the freeway so that everybody is driving a little safer, right? In the same way, if we go back to that society where there are no rules and something happens like a fire, right? We might come together, like, I'll bring my bucket of water and you bring yours, but we don't have anyone that's organized enough to have taken a little bit of money from everyone and made a fire department, right? So that's the role of government. One, enforce the rules. Number two, provide us with things that make society better. So we'll chip in a little bit of money, right, in taxes so that we get freeways, because I kind of like having roads, and so that we get a public education, and so that we get, I don't know, the DMV. But I hate the DMV, but I'm glad that they're there. Anyway, so this is the role of government, but obviously that changes during a time of crisis. Right? And at any point, what we need to ask ourselves about what government should do is kind of based on two things. Number one, what do we think is right? Like ethically, morally right. Number two, what is good for the whole of society, right? For the whole of society. So even if I don't really want to drive at the speed limit, it's better for the whole of society if we do it. During a time of crisis, like right now, a lot of Americans are losing their jobs, right? Current unemployment rate is at 13%. The chances are you know someone who's lost their job because of what's going on. So the government is looking at what is right and what's going to help the whole of society. And they're proposing a few things. So number one, everybody, right, would get about $1,000.
Those cash payments or tax rebates of $1,000 or more that would get sent to hard-hit American workers right away.
We're going big, and that's the way it'll be.
President Trump now pushing for quick relief as restaurants and stores shutter from coast to coast. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin.
Americans need cash now, and the president wants to get cash now. And I mean now, in the next 2 weeks.
It's part of a massive economic infusion now in the works.
Right? So you get $1,000. The idea is that that's good, right? It helps people. But also, number two, if everyone has $1,000, maybe we will spend it, and then we can stop other companies from going down and the unemployment rate getting worse. Okay. The second thing they're looking at is putting a stop on rent. So you wouldn't have to pay your rent for a while, so that Americans can keep their homes. Right? That sounds good. That sounds like maybe it's the right thing to do. And also it would help the economy. right? Because if you can't pay your rent, your landlord doesn't get money, his job goes downhill, he might lose his property. It's this kind of vicious cycle. This does not mean that you don't pay your rent at all, but it means that if you do not pay rent, they cannot kick you out of your house. And this is true until at some point in May, okay? If you or your family need any more information about this, send me an email and I'll send you everything I got, okay? In the same way, this also happened in the 1930s. Do you guys remember when we were still in class, we did the simulation, and you guys had to do things like make your clothes out of flour sacks, and then there was the bonus army in DC asking for money, and it was all through the Great Depression, right? Some of you had to give your kids up for adoption. Tough times. Anyway, when we were learning about that, at the very end, Franklin Roosevelt comes to power. And what he does is he comes out with something called the New Deal. And there are hundreds of programs put into place to get Americans jobs, to get them back to work, to help them out, to do all of these things, right? We're going to look at those more next week. But a lot of those programs are based around something he calls the Second Bill of Rights. So things he believes every American has a right to. And this week, I just want you to think, do you agree? Do you agree that our government should ensure these rights to every American? And what should our government be doing now? And could our local government be doing more? Right? So the Economic Bill of Rights stated that every American has a right to a job, to a minimum wage, to a decent shelter, to health care, to economic security in the face of challenges like sickness or unemployment. So if you get coronavirus, you shouldn't need to worry about your income, right? Or if you are fired instantly, the government should take care of you for a while. Last one, the right to a good education. Okay, so these are just 6. There were more than 6, but those are the 6 we're going to look at for this week. I'm asking you to do a little bit of a reflection on what you think, and then we're going to talk a bit about what is our government currently doing, what should they be doing, okay? Most important thing, I know that you are good enough and you are smart enough to get this done, okay? However, I also know that you are good enough and you are smart enough to know what you need to do during this time. If this is taking you too long, if you have other things that you need to do for your family, please reach out, please talk to me, okay? I'm here for you. Remember, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and maybe most importantly during this time, I've got your back. Reach out if you need anything, okay? Send me an email, talk to me during our video chats that are going on during class, whatever you need, okay? I genuinely care about you, I'm here for you. I hope this is interesting for you, and if I can be of any help, let me know. Okay, have a good one. I'm gonna go back to my job at the office. Okay, bye.